We were once a family of four, a family that shared everything: love, laughter, and countless Sunday dinners. We gathered at the kitchen table, me and my husband at each end, our two sons between us. There was always room for more, but it was us four that filled it up, making memories. But now, the table only seats two, and the silence is deafening. I need to tell you our story, not the one where we were victims, but the one where we made the choices that ruined everything. It all started with two sons, and in the end, it was the silent one, Derek, who would be the one lost to us forever. Derek was the older one, steady, reliable, always quiet in the background, the kind of guy who changed your car's oil without being asked, who showed up early and stayed late and never asked for praise. He married Caitlin, a woman who, when he left, made him light up like I hadn't seen in years. Together, they had a daughter named Rosie. We used to watch her grow, listening to her little giggles at family gatherings. She was 4 when everything came crashing down. She's 7 now, and we haven't been invited to see her since. Patrick, on the other hand, was a different story. The younger son, always charming and full of life, loud, always the center of attention, and always late. 2 hours late, to be exact, but it never bothered us. He had a way of making excuses that made it all seem so innocent. We believed him, and that, I now realize, was our first mistake. It was at a family barbecue 3 years ago that things took a turn. Patrick met Caitlin for the first time. They talked for what felt like an eternity by the cooler, but I didn't think much of it. Turns out, it wasn't nothing. By October, Derek discovered something that shattered him. Messages, phone calls, things no man should ever find on his wife's phone, especially about his own brother. He called us that night, and my husband picked up. I saw his face change, but he said very little. After he hung up, he sat at the kitchen table and told me what Derek had found. My first thought wasn't for Derek, it was for Patrick. I want you to understand that. That's the thing I regret most. We called Patrick that night. He didn't deny anything. Instead, he tried to explain it all away. He said Caitlin had been unhappy for a long time, that Derek was hard to live with. He made it sound like his actions were justified. And like fools, we listened. We should have told him it wasn't about Caitlin's happiness. It was about what he did to his brother. But we didn't. Instead, we made excuses, and that was our second mistake. Patrick's smooth talk worked, but Derek's quiet devastation was something we ignored. And now, I have to live with that. The next morning, Derek came over. He sat in Patrick's chair, the one he always sat in when we had family dinners. It felt odd seeing him there, especially when Patrick wasn't. He was calm, unnervingly calm, and that terrified me. I've come to learn that men are most dangerous when they're calm. Derek didn't yell, he didn't cry, he didn't even seem angry. He just laid it out. The dates, the messages, a timeline that spanned 6 months. He didn't need to shout because his silence was louder than any words could be. He simply put everything on the table and waited. My husband, trying to make sense of it all, said, "Son, these things are complicated." Derek stared at him for a long time. There was no anger in his eyes, just this cold, almost detached look. Then he stood up, put on his jacket, and left without a word. The door didn't slam, it didn't even creak. It just closed softly, as if Derek had already made his decision, and the door closing was merely a formality. That moment stuck with me. We spent the next couple of weeks trying to patch things up with Patrick. We called him every day. "How are you doing? Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Anything we can do?" We didn't call Derek, at least not much. We gave him space. But in reality, what we were doing was telling him, without saying a word, that Patrick needed us more than he did. and Patrick took full advantage of it. He moved in with us for 6 weeks. He cried a lot. I thought it was because he felt guilty, but now I know better. Patrick didn't cry out of remorse. He cried because things weren't going his way. Caitlin didn't leave Derek as cleanly as he'd hoped. The situation wasn't unfolding in the exact way he'd imagined, so he cried, not for what he had done, but for how inconvenient it was. During those 6 weeks, we didn't check in with Derek. We didn't ask how he was holding up, even though he was doing everything alone. He was the one who took care of Rosie 4 nights a week, taking her to school, packing her lunch, making her dinner, and doing the bedtime routine, all while dealing with the pain of finding out his brother and wife had betrayed him. But we didn't offer him any help. Instead, we made excuses for Patrick. We told him that Caitlin wasn't right for Derek. We said that out loud in our kitchen while Derek was alone caring for his daughter. Patrick, meanwhile, stayed in our guest room, eating the meals we made, getting advice we gave him as if everything would just be okay. I see now that we should have told him the truth. What he had done was unforgivable, and if he wanted any kind of relationship with us moving forward, he needed to rebuild trust with Derek, not explain himself to us. But we didn't say that. Instead, we acted as though everything was fine. The divorce process started in January. Derek wasted no time hiring a lawyer. It was fast, efficient, decisive. My husband thought it was too fast, that Derek should take some time to think things through. But Derek didn't ask for our opinion. He didn't need our advice. And when my husband called him, trying to convince him to slow down, Derek didn't even let him finish the sentence. He simply said, "I have one question for you. When I called you in October, who did you call first, me or Patrick?" My husband didn't answer. Derek hung up, and that was the last time we spoke to him. The divorce was finalized in March. Derek got primary custody of Rosie. Caitlin had her every other weekend and 2 evenings a week. The court decided that Derek had been the consistent parent, and so he was the one who deserved to keep her. It made sense. But we couldn't bring ourselves to go to any of the hearings. We didn't offer Derek any support during the process. Instead, we focused on Patrick, who by then had already moved on to someone new. He seemed to be doing just fine, and that should have told us something. In April, Patrick made his big announcement. He and Caitlin were officially together. It was like he was waiting for us to congratulate him, like it was some sort of achievement. My husband shook his hand and told him he was proud. I want to stop and make sure you understand what I just wrote. My husband, our son's father, shook the hand of the man who'd betrayed his other son in celebration in our kitchen. It felt like a betrayal in itself, but we didn't think about that. Or maybe we did and chose not to. Either way, it was all downhill from there. A week later, we went out to dinner with Patrick and Caitlin at the same restaurant where Derek and Caitlin had their rehearsal dinner 6 years before. We didn't even pause to think about what that meant, or maybe we did, but we chose to ignore it. It wasn't until later, when Derek found out, that the gravity of our actions really hit home. Derek sent my husband a text that simply said, "Don't contact me or Rosie again." At the time, we thought Derek was being extreme. We told ourselves he was overreacting. He wasn't being extreme, he was being exact. He was doing exactly what we had set him up to do, and we didn't even understand the difference. Mother's Day came, and I sent Derek a handwritten card. I told him I loved him, I missed him, and I hoped we could talk soon. He sent it back unopened with "Return to Sender" written in his handwriting across the front. I stood at the mailbox, holding that envelope for what felt like an eternity. When I told Patrick about it, he just shrugged it off, saying Derek always held grudges. He said it like it was a flaw, like it was Derek's problem that he couldn't just forgive us. I believed him because I wanted to. I wanted to believe that this whole mess could be fixed if only Derek would see reason, but reason didn't matter. In June, we sent Rosie a birthday gift, a stuffed rabbit she had been asking for. We knew about it because we overheard her talking about it at Easter, the last time we'd seen her. We tracked the package, saw that it was delivered, signed for, and heard nothing in return. No thank you, no acknowledgement. My husband called Derek. No answer. He left a voicemail telling Derek we just wanted to wish Rosie a happy birthday, telling him we missed her, that we hoped she liked the rabbit. Derek didn't respond until 3 hours later. When he finally called back, he didn't say hello. The first words out of his mouth were, "She doesn't know who sent it. I put it in her room without a card. She's 4. She doesn't need to know who sent things. She just needs things to be stable." My husband started to speak, but Derek cut him off. "I'm going to say this once," Derek said. "You went to dinner with them. You shook his hand. You sent my ex-wife a birthday card last month. You are not safe people for my daughter to be around right now. Maybe ever. I haven't decided, but right now, no." The phone call ended, and my husband sat at the table, silent. I made tea, but neither of us drank it. We still didn't see it. We still thought we were the victims. We thought if Derek would just calm down, he'd see that we loved him, and that would be enough. But love wasn't enough, not when you choose against someone. Summer came and went, and we continued to try to patch things up with Patrick. He and Caitlin were still together, and though things between them were rocky, they seemed to be getting by. But every time Patrick came to us, it felt like we were playing the role of his emotional support team. He would cry, vent, and we'd listen, offering comfort and advice. We believed he needed us, and maybe he did, but I couldn't help but wonder if we were just enabling him. Meanwhile, Derek was still silent, completely out of our lives. We hadn't heard from him, and I hadn't seen Rosie in over a year. It didn't feel real, this gulf between us, the emptiness of it. We spent a lot of time blaming Derek for the distance, blaming him for not coming back, for not seeing that we were still his parents and that we loved him. But the truth was, we had given up on him long before he stopped calling. We had chosen Patrick's comfort over Derek's pain, and now we were reaping the consequences. Then, in the fall, my husband wrote Derek a letter. It wasn't through a lawyer this time. It was a simple, heartfelt letter, 1 page long. He acknowledged our mistakes, our choices, our lack of consideration for Derek's feelings, and we admitted we had failed him. We said we weren't asking for anything. We just needed him to know that we understood what we had done and that we were sorry. 6 weeks passed, and then, one day, a letter arrived. It wasn't from Derek, but it was a response. It was a legal document, 3 pages long, detailing every attempt we had made to contact him since June. Every card we had sent, every voicemail, every call, every drive-by, all documented. My husband sat at the kitchen table reading it, and for the first time I saw the weight of what we had done hit him. He was silent, staring at the paper in disbelief, still in denial that Derek had gone this far. I wasn't in denial. I had seen it coming, but that didn't make it hurt any less. For the first time, I understood the magnitude of the choices we had made. Derek wasn't just cutting us off because he was angry. He was cutting us off because he had to. We had pushed him to the brink, and now he was choosing to protect his daughter and himself from a family that had shown where their loyalty lay. The legal notice from Derek's lawyer said it all. We had chosen wrong, and we had to live with it. The door between us and Derek was already closed, and everything after that was just the inevitable aftermath. We had to face it. We had failed as parents. We failed to recognize our son's need for us until it was too late. By then, it was already clear to Derek what we had prioritized, and he was done. Winter arrived, and with it came a kind of numbness. It wasn't just the cold outside, but the chill that had set in around us. Patrick, still clinging to the past, came over a few times in December, wanting to talk. He was working through things with Caitlin, things that had gone sour in their relationship, but nothing seemed to stick. He was still lost in the wreckage of what had happened, unable to move forward. We listened, offered advice, and told him everything would be okay. It felt like we were stuck in a loop, endlessly trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. One night, Patrick came over to talk about how Caitlin had ended things. He was a mess, red-eyed, unshaven, with that same empty look he had worn when things had first fallen apart. He sat at the table, shoulders slumped, and said, "She told me she never actually loved me, said she used the affair to get out of her marriage with Derek." He looked utterly destroyed, but I felt nothing. Not the satisfaction I thought I might feel when his world crumbled the way Derek's had. Not anger or relief, just an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The symmetry of it was stark. The brother who had betrayed his own flesh and blood was now facing the same betrayal. Patrick had been used, just like Derek. It was like looking at a mirror and seeing everything that had gone wrong, all the mistakes we had made, staring back at us. My husband, ever the fixer, got up and put a hand on Patrick's shoulder. I watched them, the way he tried to comfort him. But it hit me then. This was the son we had chosen, the one we had sided with, and this was the mess we had helped create. Derek had been the quiet one, the one who had suffered in silence, and now it was Patrick, the one we had tried to protect, who was crying over the very same woman who had used him in the same way she had used his brother. Patrick stayed for 2 more weeks, and we let him. It was like old habits had died hard, but as soon as those 2 weeks passed, I knew. I told him he needed to find his own place. "You need to go," I said. "I love you, but you need to figure this out on your own." For the first time in 2 years, it felt like I had done the right thing, but it was far too late to make a real difference. That night, my husband wrote Derek another letter. This one wasn't long. It wasn't filled with excuses or pleas for forgiveness. It was simple, honest. "We made choices that showed you exactly what you were worth to us, compared to Patrick. We were wrong. We are not asking for anything. We just need you to know that we know." 6 weeks later, the response came. It wasn't a letter. It was a photograph. No note, no return address, just a picture of Rosie standing at what looked like a school event, next to a woman with dark hair holding her hand. Rosie was smiling, that same smile Derek had when he was small. And standing beside her, the woman, Natalie, had been the one who had stepped into the space Derek had left. She had become the mother figure we never were, the one who was there for Rosie, who had been part of her life when we refused to acknowledge how badly we had hurt Derek. My husband put the photo on the refrigerator. We look at it every morning, and every time I see it, I feel the weight of our choices. It's not just a picture, it's a reminder. A receipt for everything we lost, the daughter we no longer have access to, the son who has shut us out, the family dinners that will never happen again. We were the ones who put this in motion. We are the ones who have to live with it. Time passed slowly after that, the silence stretching between us like a long, unspoken truth. It wasn't just Derek we had lost. It was Rosie, too. Every day felt like a reminder of the doors we had closed with our own hands, doors we would never open again. We couldn't bring ourselves to take the extra chairs down from the kitchen table. We didn't want to admit it, but we both knew those chairs would never be filled again. I thought about Derek all the time, about how he must have felt watching us choose Patrick over him, watching us ignore the pain he was going through while we comforted the one who had caused it. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the realization that we had let it happen. We had made the decision to ignore his needs, to prioritize Patrick's drama over Derek's quiet suffering. And when it came time to make amends, we were too late. But there were moments, small moments, where I allowed myself to hope. Lorraine, Derek's aunt, would call me from time to time with updates. She was kind, understanding. She knew how hard this was for us, and she wanted us to know that Derek was doing well. He was happy. Rosie was thriving, excelling in school, making friends. They were okay. Better than okay. They were building a life without us. The hardest part was hearing about it in the way I did, through someone else, through Lorraine's carefully chosen words. "Derek's seeing someone," she told me one day. "Her name's Natalie. She's great with Rosie. They're happy." I sat with that information for days, letting it sink in. I couldn't stop thinking about it. There was a woman out there, someone I didn't know, raising my granddaughter, helping her learn, guiding her through life while we stood on the outside, waiting for an invitation that would never come. It was a quiet kind of grief, the kind that wears you down over time, bit by bit. And then, one day, Lorraine told me something that changed everything. She said, "Derek asked me to tell you something. He wants you to stop waiting. He's made his peace with it. He thinks you should make yours." I didn't say anything at first. The words hit me hard, but I didn't know how to respond. What was left to say? I'd spent so much time hoping things would go back to normal, hoping Derek would come around, that I never considered what it meant if he truly didn't want us back in his life. I had to face the truth. It wasn't just Derek who had made peace with it. It was me, too. I had to. Later that night, I told my husband what Lorraine had said. He didn't respond immediately, but I could see the storm brewing in his eyes. He was angry. He didn't want to accept that this was the end, but for me, it was becoming clearer. We had pushed Derek away, and now he was done. He wasn't coming back, and no amount of waiting would change that. We sat there, in silence, just as we had many times before, but this time it was different. There was no hope left to hold on to, no expectation that things would somehow fix themselves. We had lost Derek and everything that had come with him, and the finality of it hit me harder than anything else. We had reached the end of the road. Spring came, and with it, a kind of quiet acceptance. It wasn't the kind of peace I had imagined. It wasn't the resolution I'd hoped for when I thought we could make things right. It was just the slow, steady recognition that our choices had led us to a place where we no longer had a place, no longer a family, not in the way we once had been. The last time I saw Patrick, he called to say he was doing better. Therapy was helping. He was working through things, trying to find his footing after everything that had happened. He talked about Derek, how he still thought about him, how he wanted to reach out, but he didn't know if he should. I wasn't sure what to say to him. So much had changed in the years since everything fell apart. Patrick had been so central to everything we did, so loud and so desperate for attention, always needing us in ways Derek never had. But now Patrick was in therapy, trying to piece together the parts of himself that we had let get shattered. And Derek, the quiet one, the one we had pushed aside, was moving on with his new family without us. When Patrick asked me, "Do you think Derek would talk to me?" I wasn't sure how to answer. "I don't know your brother anymore, Patrick," I said. "I lost access to knowing him when I helped you instead of him." Patrick didn't say anything after that. There was nothing left to say. The words hung in the air, heavy with all the things we had never acknowledged, all the things we had never said when it was still possible to fix them. He stayed quiet for a long time before he finally said, "I know, Mom, I know." It wasn't an apology, but I believed him. I wanted to believe that knowing was enough. But I also knew that knowing wasn't going to change anything. Not now. That night, my husband and I sat down, talking about what had happened, what had gone wrong. We both knew we couldn't undo the past, but there was still something we hadn't faced. We had chosen the wrong son. Not in the way most people would think, not because we loved one more than the other, but because we failed to see how much Derek needed us. We failed to listen to his quiet, steady need for us to show up without him having to ask. And in doing so, we pushed him away. And now we were paying for it. There were no more family dinners, no more birthday celebrations, no more Sunday afternoons where the house was full and everything felt normal. It wasn't just Derek we had lost. It was the life we used to have, the one where we didn't have to think about who needed us more or who was louder, where we could just show up for each other. That night, we wrote another letter to Derek. It wasn't long, but it was honest. We made choices that showed you exactly what you were worth to us compared to your brother, it said. We were wrong. We are not asking for anything. We just needed you to know that we know. That was the last letter we sent.
Weeks passed and we waited. For what exactly? I'm not sure. For Derek to call, for him to reach out, for some sign that we weren't truly lost to him forever. But nothing came. Our lives continued on quietly, each day blending into the next, like walking through a fog. The grief was constant, but it wasn't the kind that burned you. It was the kind that settled into your bones, dull and unrelenting. Then, one day, Lorraine called again. She said she had seen Derek at a family event, a cousin's birthday party. And there, in the background of the photograph she took, was Derek, laughing. Not a forced laugh, not a polite chuckle, but the kind of laughter where you're not even thinking about how it sounds or looks because you're simply enjoying the moment. He was truly happy, something I hadn't seen in a long time. And then there was Rosie, standing next to him, her juice box in hand, looking up at him with that trusting gaze only a child can have, the way kids look at the people who make them feel safe, the way Rosie used to look at us, only now it was Derek she trusted, not us. It was Derek she relied on to make her feel secure. That photograph hit me like a ton of bricks. In one small moment, I saw the full weight of everything we had lost. Not just Derek, not just Rosie, but the life that could have been, the family we could have still been. There was nothing we could do to change it. It wasn't just Derek who had moved on, it was Rosie too. She had built a life that didn't include us, and we had no one to blame but ourselves. Lorraine could tell how much the photo affected me. She was kind, but she didn't sugarcoat anything. She said, I think you need to understand that life is happening without you in it. Derek is okay, more than okay. He's found his peace. I held the photo for a long time before finally putting it away. I didn't put it on the refrigerator with the other pictures. That felt too much like an admission, an acknowledgement of everything we had lost. Some truths are better absorbed slowly, and this was one of those truths. Derek was fine. He was building something for himself, something that didn't need us. He didn't need our love. He never did. It was hard to let that go, the idea that we could somehow fix it, but we couldn't. We were the ones who made the choice to choose Patrick over Derek, and we had to live with the consequences. The truth was sitting in front of us, plain and simple. Derek had trusted us, and we had failed him. We had taken him for granted, and now he had moved on. He had built a life that didn't include us, and that was the reality we had to face. 3 months passed after the photograph arrived. Lorraine called again. She said Derek had asked her to tell us something. He wanted us to know that Rosie was fine. She was happy. She didn't ask about us because she was too young to remember us. That's not cruelty, Lorraine said. That's just what happens when children are removed from relationships before memories can solidify. It hit me hard, and I didn't know how to respond.
There was nothing left to say. Derek had made his peace. He had found a life that was not built around us, and we had to accept it, even if it broke us to do so. My husband and I sat at the kitchen table that night, just like we always had, but this time there was no hope in the air, no waiting for something that would never come. "Stop waiting," Derek had said through Lorraine. "I'm not coming back. Make your peace with it." We didn't have a choice. We had made our choices long ago, and now we had to live with them. It was a painful kind of freedom, but it was freedom nonetheless. There would be no more phone calls, no more letters, no more waiting for a knock on the door. The door between us and Derek was closed, and we had locked it. We didn't have to knock anymore. We had no right to. Patrick called again in December. He said he was doing better. He said therapy was helping, and then he asked about Derek, about whether we thought he would ever reach out. He asked me if I thought Derek would talk to him again. I told him the truth. "I don't know your brother anymore, Patrick. I lost access to knowing him when I chose you over him." Patrick was quiet. "I know, Mom," he said, and in that moment I believed him. But I also knew that it didn't matter. We had both lost something, and no amount of therapy, no amount of apologies could give it back. The table still seats 6, but we don't move the extra chairs. We can't. The family we used to be no longer exists, and that reality is something we must live with. We have each other, my husband and I, and the photograph of Rosie that now hangs on the fridge. It's not a family photo. It's a reminder of everything we lost, but it's also a reminder of the consequences of our choices. The quiet sun went silent. The door closed without a sound, and we stood on the other side, holding the weight of every decision we made. And the lesson, the one we couldn't avoid, is this: your children are watching everything. They see every choice you make, every person you choose to protect, every betrayal you allow to slide. They will learn from you, and one day they'll decide how much of their lives they're willing to let you into. That's what we taught Derek. We taught him that his pain wasn't worth our attention. We chose Patrick, and we didn't even realize what we had done until it was too late. The choices we made have cost us more than we could have ever imagined. But the door doesn't slam, it just clicks shut. And now we're standing here with nothing but the consequences of our actions. Takeaway: it's never too late to change the way you show up for your family. Don't wait until the damage is done to choose the right person or the right way to love. Life doesn't wait for you to figure it out. So make your choices wisely, because they will define you, and they will define the future you have with those you love.